Let your curiosity rise.
Matrix webcast,
Where the human spirit flies. Matrix webcast. Where the human spirit flies.
I'm Raju, and and can you hear me, Navya? Yeah, this is Raman Anam Raju. I'm the host for Medbricks Webcast. Dr. Abhay Dandekar is joining as a pediatrician. He's going to join soon. But yeah, it's a kind of a new gig today for me, different place. Yeah, it is a. I interviewed a lot of people from Kaiser Permanente, the CEO, former CEO, Dr. Robert Pearl, Lawrence Hamilton, and a bunch of doctors from Kaiser Permanente. I interviewed Dr. Abhay Dandekar works for him. He is a pediatrician. He worked in the industry also, like Optimum and everything. We will talk with him about that. But let me bring my co-host, beautiful, blonde, and brainy, the Dr. Susan Davis. Let me bring her. Welcome, Susan. Welcome.
Hello. Good evening, Ramana. How are you?
Good, good, good. I think so. Okay. Dandekar is yeah. Tell you, Navya, send him a message that we are going to let him in a second. So what is going on with you? Is there anything special last 2 weeks, 1 week?
Living my best life, Ramana. Living my best life. I'm one of the fortunate ones that loves what I do, and so I'm very fortunate that my work allows me to, I get to travel and I get to work with clinicians and healthcare in every aspect of the world across the country and internationally now. So one thing that keeps us all centered is our hearts. So, if you have a heart, you qualify. So I'm very blessed that my business, my startup is scaling. And so that's brilliant. And I will say, I received my signed copy of The Groundbreaker from the great Conwell Reiki. If you guys have not met, seen, or know him, you should read his book.
Yeah.
So I'm so excited. Thank you for that. I got a signed copy, so I'm thrilled. Thank you so very much. Very exciting. Thank you, Conwell, if you're out there.
Yeah. Thank you, Technology. So let me introduce you, our upcoming guest. This is Dr. Abhay Dandekar. He is a pediatrician. He did a population health. He worked in the Optimum industry. Optimum is one of the largest health insurance company, healthcare company, health plan company. So he is now working for Kaiser, and Dr. Mr. Lawrence Hamilton. And let me welcome Dr. Abhay Dandekar. Welcome, sir.
How are you?
Can you come in? I can't. Why don't we? Yeah, very good.
Hey, all right. And can you hear me okay?
We can hear you very perfectly
All right,
well.
wonderful, wonderful. How are things for both of you?
I thought you are missing in action.
Yeah, no, this is what happens when you have clinic patients up till the very end.
And also technology is not, everybody talks about AI, but it's not. A lot of these things are not intuitive. We have to still programming like a babies. All this computerized process.
Well, what ends up happening is, I think that just like many things in medicine, what I hope the AI can do is reduce the friction, right? I mean, taking 3-4 steps to create new settings in a new browser, in a new Google Chrome thing. I mean, these are the kinds of reduced friction options we can do it. I would liken it to worldwide that, phones now are using a USB-C charger, as opposed to, look, we had to have like 4 different versions of a charger for a phone. So it's kind of the same thing, but we'll get there. Hopefully
we have to get there. That is a very friction is actually those settings and all the stuff. But let me Dr. Dandekar, give me a little bit about your background, the journey up to you went through so many things, population health, you become a part of, you're born in India or you're born here, or just give us a little bit of personal journey for you.
Yeah. So I am born and raised in California. I'm a native Californian. I love California. I was born in LA and came up to Berkeley for my undergraduate. I have had sort of health on my mind for a long time, but I was not someone who grew up saying, hey, I can't wait to be a doctor. I've always wanted to be a doctor. So a lot of things actually piqued my curiosity, but almost every single one of those had to do with people. So developing and cultivating relationships is something that I've been very, very passionate about from very early on. I did go to medical school in New York at New York Medical College. And then I actually came back to do my pediatrics training in Oakland at Kaiser Permanente. And unlike other places, very proud to have actually trained with population health in mind. So training in an integrated system, making sure that we are practicing clinically excellent pediatric care, and for that matter, medical care, especially at the foundational aspect of things, particularly with children and teens. But then interacting with parents is such a huge part of what we do. I left Kaiser Permanente the first time, actually, when I moved down to Southern California, back again, where a lot of my family is. My wife's also a physician, so she matched for residency down in Southern California. And then I spent the first 8 or 9 years of my career completely in the hospital. So being a hospitalist, caring for ill children. I spent some time actually serving the underserved as part of a mobile health clinic. This was part of the Cedars-Sinai Medical Health System down in Southern California. And then I spent a fair amount of my time early on in the training environment. So I helped lead a clerkship at UCLA. I also in pediatrics, and then I also helped lead some residency programs down in LA. I came back to Kaiser Permanente 2007, 2008. And this was really around the time just pre and intra the Affordable Care Act taking place. So not only was this a very, very different time in the healthcare landscape, but for pediatrics, this saw a lot of our population really sort of explode with coverage, particularly at Kaiser Permanente. So I sort of transitioned to do a little bit more hybrid work on the inpatient and the outpatient. Also helped do a lot of teaching and training for medical students and residents. And then, ironically, I'd say 2 weeks before the pandemic hit, I actually transitioned to a population health director position over at Optum, and spent about 1.5 years during the pandemic doing some amazing work, trying to stand up different systems and really think about how to, again, reduce friction and develop relationships when it comes to patient care. This was nothing to do with pediatrics, but I learned a lot about population health management, and in a way, sort of like you get thrown into a new system, a new position, and you learn a lot in a very, very quick amount of time, as probably many, many can attest to. But I felt that my anchor and the thing that I loved the most, of course, was being in the office with patients. And so I came back to Kaiser Permanente about 4 years ago. I've been doing nothing but pediatrics since. And on top of that, really helping to think very deeply about what are some of the strengths and accelerators for pediatric health in this country and in our system, and also what are the major gaps that exist, not just in general pediatrics, but also in our intensive care areas where we have big, giant islands and deserts, if you will, as well as in the outpatient area where we really need to have equity and we need to have honest conversations about what population health means in pediatrics, particularly when it comes to devoting resources to pediatrics. Because again, if we have a relative shortage of primary care physicians in this country, including pediatricians, we need to cultivate a culture that really compels new people to come into pediatrics in our field.
Let me ask you a question, just then I will hand over to Susan. But what is your time that you spend in Optimum Health? What did you do there, and actually how that population health? What is the work nature of your work in the Optimum Health?
Yeah, well, a lot of it was to try and again reduce friction and increase efficiencies, and really understand what our patients need and how can we, in fact, help patients be cared for at the right place at the right time. This was also really thinking about how can we stand up different kinds of systems. So like advice call systems or post cardiac care for seniors, increasing the amount of outreach that we can do for diabetes care. How do we prevent people who are with poor access from coming into the ER so much? Can we solve some things through just basic nutrition and nursing help and care in the places that patients are? And then also really trying to organize and streamline how we make the referral systems and the approval systems with different authorizations happen. I can't say that that was my life's work, so it's not something that I spent a whole lot of time doing, but given the perspective and the time that I spent at Optum, I really appreciated and enjoyed it, and it gave me a much, much better, deeper understanding of how not only our healthcare system works, but how what kind of power things like integration have. And this is something that I think at Kaiser Permanente and the Permanente Medical Group, we've been really capitalizing on and really trying to perfect and iteratively make a real opportunity for our patients and our populations.
Yeah, so it seems like the secret sauce to all magnificent humans is that little bit of public health knowledge. So, maybe that wasn't where you were planning on heading, but Kaiser Permanente, from what I've learned on being on the show with Romana and some of our other guests from your same institution, you have a magnificent flow of humans through your system, and it seems to be very much working. But once you add that public health perspective, I mean, I don't know how you guys could round out your services any better, but that truly seems to me to be the secret sauce. You said it wasn't something you thought or your life's work, but look at all those systems. You just described a real web of what is actually happening on the outside before our patients come into our clinics and our offices and in our acute care settings. And I think having a knowledge of that web is almost imperative to good care across the lifespan. Do you agree?
You're absolutely right. I mean, first off, that nexus and that web, it's so impressive what is actually at the base of the iceberg, right? If you think of how much mass there is of, everything from health information to community resources and support to even just being able to access the healthcare system. And then when you do have that touch point of the healthcare system, how do you actually then toggle back and forth so that you could have trusting relationships developed with your provider, with the healthcare system that you deal with, not to mention the transitions that happen naturally when people go from one employer to the other, from one age to the other, when people have been actually really navigating through the economics of things and they're struggling with how do I actually save from a healthcare standpoint? And what if they're actually not staying in California for that matter? Or what if they're coming back to California in some of these neighborhoods? So many different factors at play here. But you're right, having that perspective, whether it's from a public health standpoint or a health system standpoint, it makes a difference in the clinical setting. It makes a difference in pediatrics. It is really important to think of this, not just for me personally as the 0 to 18-year-old, but how do we keep healthy from 0 to 99? That's really the ethos that we want to be thinking about, especially when practicing 21st century medicine at Kaiser Permanente.
I agree. And I think it's in those transitions of care, whether it be on the inside or on the outside, that we tend to be, the gaps get hopefully narrow and narrow with AI and all this innovation. And a lot of people were wanting to work in health tech and tech and tech and tech. And I'm thinking, like, Romana and I talk about this all the time, the amount of resources that are lost in that web or webs. I want people to start focusing there, those gaps and those transitions, not only just from 0 to 18 and then 18 on up, but the resources through the transitions of care. Where are they? How do we get them? And why don't we have more people working right in that space?
I think for a couple of reasons. So number one, you're absolutely right that if you think about transitions, what makes the biggest difference when it comes to reducing friction in transitions, whether that be going from a specific healthcare setting like the inpatient or the emergency room to the outpatient, or it means transition in age, right? So like 18-year-olds going to now go from pediatrics to an adult medicine setting, or people who are newly retiring and now entering the sort of Medicare space, right? All those transitions, they definitely are made easier when you have trusting, reliable, sustainable, longitudinal human relationships at the core of that.
Agreed.
AI can certainly help provide tools to establish more trust, to establish stickier relationships. But AI is not going to replace those human relationships. And
Not
the
a
stronger and the better that you have those human relationships established, the easier those transitions can be. Now, there are definitely things that AI and tech can help with navigation, but as far as like solving core problems of those transitions, they're meant to augment. They're not meant to replace.
Agreed. Trust me, I know what I'm doing.
That's right. Yeah.
Nurse, Susan is a doctor of nursing. She works with a lot of nurses, so she understands this area much better than me in that, pediatric side. Let me.
Absolutely true, by the way.
Yeah, they are nurses.
That was my segue into my next question, but go ahead, Ramana. He picked up on what I was about to say. So that is the name of his podcast. Trust me, I know what I'm doing. So I want to just highlight that really quickly because we have really some synergy in this space, just the three of us right here. I've looked at a lot of your guests and was listening as I was getting ready for this show. And you are doing very similar to what we're doing. We just really enjoy talking to amazing people doing amazing things. So how long have you been doing that podcast? And I love your guests. They're as varied as ours are, just across the spectrum, amazing people doing amazing things. Tell us about the start of Trust Me, I Know What I'm Doing.
Yeah, first off, that's very kind of you to say. And I think, anything that allows us to highlight conversations and something that I remind myself of often is that conversation is truly the antidote to apathy, right? We make it so that it can be the ignition point for us. Honestly, as a physician, definitely early on in my career and even, in general, like we like to do things, we like to fix things, we like to help people. But a lot of times our biggest power is just simply in being a trusted listening voice. So being an effective listener, I've realized very early on, especially with parents and with teenagers, specifically, that listening offered such a deep platform to cultivating trust, not just trust with the healthcare system or with me, but actually trust in themselves. And, really my biggest power as a listener was to then take some of that and help steer and gently guide and, or for that matter, listen even further and understand the cues of that. And, I wanted to make sure that there was a platform in this particular case, specifically for the South Asian and global Indian diaspora to have more and more conversations. And they've been just wonderful places to, start great ideas and even listen to people who have great talent and have been able to accelerate that trust in themselves and develop that confidence in some kind of talent or achievement. One thing that Dr. Vivek Murthy, of course, shared a few years ago was just how difficult it is to be a human and let alone a parent in the United States at this time, just because of all the information that's out there, all the perspective barriers to developing community and how that factors back into this incredible epidemic of loneliness. So anything and everything that we can use as great kind of anchors and buoys to ensure that we develop more community, that we have sound and effective information, that we can base what we do both in science, but also in psychology, and really understanding each other and bridging those gaps through conversation. I think that's been one of the things that's been a joy. I started it during the pandemic. I haven't finished it. So it's an ongoing thing, much like both of you and doing some amazing work with some terrific conversations. Hopefully it's just generating that much more conversation for all of us.
Excellent.
Yeah. We need a more podcasts like you and me. I think it's the communication is important in the world of medicine. I want to know. I met actually Dr. Vivek Murthy. In fact, when he wrote that book, and I met him in person, and he signed a book. He's talking about loneliness, but pediatrics is not much. Population health may be interested in that aspect of it, but loneliness is a very I went through a little bit of myself, so I can tell you that for 3 months or 4 months. So it's a big problem. Let me ask you about the pediatric side of it, or just maybe it may not be your field directly involved with it. Pediatric emergencies. I interviewed a couple of doctors. What they're saying is in the country there is a lot of deserts, as you said, that desert islands there, that they're not equipped or trained, even trained in the pediatric emergencies. Can you shed some light on that kind of things, talking with your guests and with your background?
Yeah, I can. First thing, one thing I would just want to mention is that, actually loneliness is pervasive everywhere. It's a specific epidemic for our teens right now, and parents are actually facing this quite a bit. So just a quick word on that one. It used to be that in more communal settings where there were neighbors, there were grandparents, there were lots and lots of people around you, you could literally, or hopefully you would be asking people these questions and you would get some information. Then you would go to the healthcare system and either confirm or actually affirm some of these messages. Now, in the digital landscape, and with so many people actually relying on helpful information sometimes, but also a lot of confusing information, not just misinformation, it actually does make it's so that parents and teens are struggling with this quite a bit. So I would say that the loneliness epidemic is pervasive everywhere. It's not just for adults. It's not just for seniors. It definitely is pervasive for parents, especially with younger kids who are already fatigued. They're struggling to work in their jobs and be professionals, but also handle women, teens. They're all vulnerable to this. As far as pediatric emergencies go, yes, it is true that we have a dearth and a gap. We have real deserts out there where patients who really need the emergency or the critical care or the inpatient support, we're not having enough beds for them. And if we don't have enough beds and we don't have enough volume in some of these areas, it means that people can't get trained in some of those aspects of providing pediatric care. Now, hopefully this means that there are safe and adequate emergency rooms that are also there. But it just also means that we need to highlight the need for people to be very pediatric friendly in those areas and train up so that children below the age of 18 and some with complex needs, even up to age 21, 25, can be managed in a way that accesses pediatric knowledge. Sometimes that's going to happen through telehealth. Sometimes that's going to happen through sort of, phoning a friend, if you will. But a lot of times this actually needs to happen more safely and soundly so that kids will get the appropriate care wherever they are, not just in a metropolitan center that has 3 pediatric ERs, but in rural America as well.
It's tricky. The training is different. It's not the same. Little guys are not just little adults, and you know that all of you so very well. So the training is very difficult. My particular, specialty, cardiac arrest, it's night and day the difference, and
Totally.
the training is so different. A pediatric hospital acute care, thank goodness, but how many don't have that? Most of them. So I can speak. It's a great question, Ramana. The training is difficult for all of us, especially in the rural deserts, and we're going to do the best we can. But back to the loneliness, I feel like that is an emergency. There a lot of them will come in even with loneliness, and there'll be behavioral health emergencies filling our emergency rooms, pediatric as well as adult. I mean, it's a bigger question perhaps for today's show, but how do we help people embrace the solitude rather than feel the weight of loneliness?
Most times I really feel that it is escaping this notion that the office visit or the touch point with healthcare is transactional, that someone's coming in to have a problem solved. More often than not, it's just asking the second question. Hey, how are you doing? Hey, what's going on in your life right now? Yes, I know you came in for X problem, but it's not just simply that I'm helping to solve your X problem and then that's it, right? It's hopefully less transactional and more relationship based. The more that we can concentrate on those relationships, the easier it's going to be for us to really solve some of these loneliness epidemics and make it so that people trust their healthcare provider in a way that they can toggle back and forth with them and not feel so lonely. Does that solve all of society's ills with loneliness and our, the epidemic that we face here? No, but at least in the healthcare environment, we can actually do our part. Maybe that will mean more neighbors talking to each other. Maybe that will mean people feeling more comfortable in asking some of those questions instead of developing a lot of sort of silos around themselves.
Creating communities again, real communities, not just, back in the day, and I know, Ramana, how you were raised in India, the families were always together. Now we're all apart, but even just forming a new community and being dedicated to that community to build those relationships so that we can be there for our young, our middle, and our old. It's all about the relationships and somehow helping them form community. Even if it starts with your healthcare team, that's fantastic. Through your church, through your community, public health efforts help build community, and then commit to iterating on that community to continuously build it and make it better. We've got to build some communities.
Some of the best conversations about health, I'm sure, are happening in the barbershops. They're happening in the beauty salons. They're happening in places where we don't expect it. So we need to do a better job also of like connecting and making sure that those conversations have sound science, that they actually have, a prevention of misinformation, and they're not confusing, but we need to meet our patients where they are. Not just we know that like health doesn't just simply exist in the four walls of a hospital or a clinic. It has to actually exist everywhere.
So along those lines that you mentioned just now about being a future physicians or going to be teachers, their brother, sister, or a family member, a guru, a teacher, all of them are combined to be the future physician, because just medical knowledge alone is not, yeah, I can do that in the future. But these kind of things that one of the substitute for the loneliness is there could be, this is a doctor should be that a future physician should be the mentor, brother, sister, or a teacher. All of them together is a powerful tool. In my, what do you think of that?
Yeah. This you're describing everything that is the foundation of human connection, right? Like,
Yeah.
It's one thing for us to try and create a great prompt for an AI tool that will help make a diagnosis or help make a predictive analysis of whether or not you need antibiotics, whether this is more than just a migraine, whether this is a common cold, or whether this is a terrible condition like a cancer or something else that's a little more ominous that needs reasonable treatment right away. So you can have all the data and you can even have all the AI that helps with those things. Those are terrific tools, but you absolutely need to rely on humans to help translate that, to help understand how that fits into your life, to help understand what context that means for you. In my case, for children and for teens and for parents, how does this actually work? Now, nuance and context are important, right? I have to take into account language. I have to take into account medical literacy. I have to take into account, is this someone brand new to a medical system or not? Is this someone who is actually quite medically literate? So all those factors actually come into play, and tools are helpful. They help guide and they help diagnose, but those relationships, whether they're your family member, whether they're your church member, whether or not you're in an extended family or a neighborhood, your healthcare provider, your doctor, your nurse, your pharmacist, all of these people are going to be great touch points to help put it in context and help establish, like, okay, in our heads, we understand that, the difference between something that sounds severe and something that doesn't. And if you can rely on your doctor to help actually navigate through that particular journey of, is something severe, is something not so severe, then hopefully we can actually develop a lot more reassurance that way, or we can accelerate the speed by which someone gets the care, right? Let's not spend time trying to say, okay, well, do I really think that's what's going on? Or do I want to consult back again with the AI? No, let's build consensus through relationship development.
Ramana, quickly, you said something very interesting. Really quickly, I think describing the doctor of the future, what I was thinking about while you were just speaking was, I just think doctors are a lot cooler these days. I think that, meaning they're getting a lot more diverse. They seem more like real people rather than, the white coat with their stethoscope and they were the doctor. And now I think I really think, such as yourself, a physician of the future, you have a podcast, you're really relating public health to your daily work, to your patients. I feel like there's an opportunity in our country right now where physicians always have had so many talents, but have had to laser focus on just patient care. In today's day and age, I feel like you are a representative of the doctor of the future, where you're bringing these relationships out of the office or acute care walls, and really using your talents more to give better across the lifespan care, if that makes sense.
So it's a great point that you bring up here. First off, definitely, this is the doctor of the future. The doctor of the future is not just a scientist and has academic rigor to their training. That's foundational. On top of that, the and is that the doctor of the future is someone who can relate. The doctor of the future is someone who is savvy with technology and spaces of information. There are some terrific social media applications and social media vignettes that really do a great job of outlining health and medical information in an incredibly sound way. The doctor of the future needs to understand, like, okay, I can tell you all this stuff, but what does this mean when you actually have to cook a meal tonight? What's the nutritional gain of, how do you put this into practice? How do you really practice lifestyle medicine and translate that to, like, okay, what are you going to cook tonight? Where are you going to walk today? How much are you going to actually exert? How many calories are you going to exert? Like, all these things have to be practical and relatable in order to be sustainable.
I agree. That's fun to think about.
Yeah. Let us talk about this. One of the things that was central theme of this talk is trust and fear. You mentioned, you wrote an article, I wrote it, I was impressed with that. And you mentioned something about trust and then fear. Both of them you spoke in this. Tell us a little bit about I'm going to present a topic on how the physics is going to talk about trust. Is a quantifiable way we can present through physics. I'm going to present that. But I want to listen to you and listen to your talk.
Yeah, trust is a subject that I've been really fascinated with. I mean, again, there is, I'm sure, a neurobehavioral science to this that can help quantify things and, of course, pick up on lots and lots of behavioral cues or body language cues or even verbal cues. And I think this is something that we have to navigate so often and so fast in the medical office encounter. So my most recent kind of understanding of this, especially which has been evolving with the democratization of medical knowledge and the AI tools that both we as providers and patients and families have at their disposal, really sort of speaks to, okay, when I actually enter the medical encounter space, is my fear going to materialize? Is my fear that, hey, something is going to go wrong, or that something already is wrong, or that, I'm going to receive a treatment or some kind of care that I don't know enough about, that I don't have the confidence and the security in. Most recently, that, of course, our conversation has been really, really flamed in the public space, and in an unfortunate way, in my opinion, in the vaccine conversation. That's particularly been front and center for us. So a lot of conversations I have in the office are really not about a specific study or a specific concern. It's more about the sort of generalities of, like, I'm just not sure that I have a great amount of trust in a vaccine. I fear what the vaccine might do to my child. So these conversations are centered around that delicate balance and, needling that thread, if you will, of how do you actually navigate through someone's fear and insecurity around a particular therapy and steer that more towards a trust. That doesn't mean that it has to be the decision that you want, but cultivating trust is, at least the conversations that you have are all going to be passports, if you will, to maintaining and sort of developing that trust. Most commonly, in my case, it's happening around therapeutics or vaccines. But a lot of times that trust question happens even from just being able to say, well, you know what, are you going to go to the doctor? Well, I haven't been to the doctor in a long, long time. Why haven't you gone to the doctor? Well, I'm not sure, right? I'm not sure if I trust the doctors or the systems or the institutions in order. And some of that might be the fear of what that doctor or that system might, or that healthcare provider might say, right? Like, are you prepared to, be able to ingest that particular knowledge, ingest that particular message? So there's a lot of this basic balance between fear and trust. And to be honest, this is, again, goes back to human relationship development. This is what we navigate through, not just in the healthcare system. We navigate through this all the time.
Goes back to the relationships and the communities. And if we could build our relationships within our communities, hopefully we can work on all of this loneliness and fear.
I'm going to put a news.
Just one quick point, when it comes to algorithms and data and social media, right? Most of the information that we receive is actually capitalizing on our fears, right?
Yes.
So it is a system, or not a system, but it is a culture right now that is designed for people to be more attracted and compelled to really activating the parts of their brain that are playing on, focusing on those fears as opposed to focusing on the things that are reliable and trustworthy. So,
excellent point.
Excellent
point. So gross.
That's
so
something
true,
that we've
so
seen.
gross.
Absolutely. And that's something that, over the last 10, 15 years has been an unfortunate byproduct of the culture that we're living in.
But your trust, we're talking about trust. I'm going to shed a different kind of light on the trust through physics, from the purely physics point of view. How do you quantify the trust? And we are very good at that now. So, Dr. Dandekar, my job is to bring, not a medical field. I want to do on mathematics, physics, and chemistry, other things, philosophy, art, bring them together. A multidisciplinary field works better, in my view, to solve these problems. So I'll let you comment on it.
First off, that was wonderful. I think it really was a nice way to relate all those incredible, I think, theories and put it into practice. I think you're absolutely right. And I'd never thought of this before as entropy being a proxy for thinking about like reliability of systems, thinking about burnout, thinking about trust. Three things came to mind for me when you were going through this. Areas that currently have high entropy, but low human necessity or low human contact are absolutely, forget about the economics of it for a second, but are absolutely ripe for AI intervention. Right?
Yeah.
So those things that are high entropy, that we can reduce the entropy of that system, that don't involve a whole lot of human contact or human relationship building, man, tech companies with great AI solutions, go nuts, right? We want that to actually be a great source of reducing friction, and there can actually be some high utility and high value to that. The second thing is, we humans, if you think about the entropy that we go through on a day-to-day basis, on a month-to-month basis, on a year-to-year basis, yes, high levels of entropy can lead to burnout, but small levels of entropy are actually really needed for us to innovate. We otherwise, even in very low entropy systems, yes, we can reproduce things. And for some systems, reproducibility is exactly what we need. But in order to think differently, in order to innovate, in order to actually come up with solutions that are reverse engineered or out of the box kinds of things, our minds and our relationships actually need some friction. We need some low levels of entropy in order for us to actually think differently, for us to behave differently, for us to change those systems. So I would argue that, there's probably some entropy threshold beyond which that you go that is really, really not great for teams, not great for individuals, not great for trusting relationships. So that was the second thing. And the third thing that I thought of was, even in the office-based encounter, and definitely, Susan, you can relate to this in the hundreds of encounters that you go through as a nurse, you can have conversations that change where the entropy value is changed from moment to moment, where you could talk about one subject and the entropy level is very, very low and reliable and trustworthy. And another subject or another concept or another system of health where the entropy levels are confusing. And we are in systems where neither the patient, the nurse, the doctor, the pharmacist, the medical assistant are actually aware of how chaotic that particular concept is. And I think of the patient who has just been admitted to the ICU or just, post-op from a cardiac, intervention. like there are lots of things that actually could be possible there. And so they're high entropy systems, but it's our jobs to actually recognize that and to sort of like, in a way, trying to bring them back. So and those two or three things can be true at the same time. It doesn't mean that just because you have a high entropy conversation that results in confusion or even, non-closure, you could have another conversation in the same breath with the same family, the same patient, that is actually a very low entropy conversation. Any of those things, actually, even the high or the low entropy conversations, they do actually bring value to trust.
Well said. Well said. I'll say, first of all, I love the fact that so many of the physics concepts, which have been for a zillion years very difficult to even get your hands on, much less you wrap your mind around. So first of all, I appreciate the especially the video and going a little bit further into entropy, so that we're having a conversation about entropy in a very normal manner. And you just gave several examples of what it means in normal conversation. Entropy. Most people don't. Using it in a casual sense is really helping physics become mainstream. And I agree with you 100% that without resistance of some sort, there can't be growth and change. We have to feel a certain amount of resistance. Comfort is in the world of entropy is almost like giving up. Too much comfort, you're going to slow to a point where it's surrender. So there has to be a certain amount of friction, a certain amount of pushback. But then, like you said, there's also a threshold. So like everything else, balance. And then lastly, my take-home thought, Ramana, it was something that, and he and I speak about entropy all the time. But I learned something new, or a new thought for me tonight. And so my take-home is, with high performance, you can't really have high performance without low entropy. And since I work on training from compliance to performance through with a goal of high performance, I now have a new way for myself to apply the law of entropy in trying to teach and train high performance teams. So thank you for that.
Dr. Dandekar, I want to add one more point, is important point. Where is it, when you deploy AI, when do you know that is actually adding a care or adding a noise? Sometimes after a while, that must be recognized by management. If you don't just keep on adding a bunch of alerts, bunch of fatigue, this is going to create a lot of burnout problems and the turnovers. So that is not well defined here. That's why entropy concept is extremely very well defined in that sense. It tells you exactly where the AI is adding a noise, where AI is making a sense. That is people are confused in management. Silicon Valley, you're in Silicon Valley. Everybody is talking about AI nonstop here. So they don't know that the healthcare companies are confused whether where they need to install this AI, when do they need, what places it works. Those are things are very important. People like you have to be really give us directions to everybody else.
There was a recent opinion piece, I think it was in the last few days, and a colleague, Eric Topol, who's
Hey, Eric Topol,
absolutely an amazing leader in this space, wrote about this, or at least commented it on a tweet. And he was just saying that, like, look, at the end of the day, all of these AI tools, yes, they are definitely creating a large body of solutions that are out there. But unless you have data and feedback that shows you that it's actually adding value to patients and providers and systems, unless you're collecting that data and really getting that feedback, then it's a lot of, in the end, it's a lot of just random tools that we're using to try and find solutions. If anything, it's actually adding to the entropy of the system. So
that's trading entropy for entropy.
Yeah. So I think your point is absolutely correct, and you're right. More, physician leaders, management leaders, nursing leaders, we all need to be very cognizant of, making sure that we have a closed loop there to understand, are these AI solutions actually bringing value to our patients and to the care we provide? Or is it just another tool that in even a couple of months is going to fall by the wayside?
You know that the physics is playing a role now. We try to find solutions in healthcare, within the healthcare system. Now we need to embrace other fields to get the solutions, because we could not find solutions in healthcare. I ran a medical diagnostic center for 30 years, 25 years. I know the problems in that. This is a big problem that we have to embrace in other fields for solutions. In my view, one of them is the physics itself. That is going to be. Yeah, Susan, you last word. I give you a last word for you. What do you want to say?
Well, I'm just so grateful for the work that you're doing in California with our children and the children of California. And thank you so very much for your work in understanding and building communities. And I personally am grateful for being part of your community now and your show. I love your show. I mean, as a physician, and then you take that kindness and consideration and really find the human-centered part of each one of your guests. I mean, the love in the chef and the talents of the coaches. And it's just, I really can very much relate to the conversations you've had. And I think truly that's what this is about. I mean, from physician to global sharing and making of community. Thank you for what you're doing in your everyday, and thank you for being part of our community.
Ramana, Susan, first off, we're far too kind, and I really do appreciate that. That means a lot coming from you. And on top of that, I can't thank you both enough for raising and elevating and amplifying some of these concepts. It's really great to make sure that we are constantly cross-pollinating with different fields, with different industries. We have a lot to learn from so many different spaces out there, and there's not enough energy that's put into that. So I really thank you for having me as a guest, and thank you for certainly listening to the podcast and the conversations I'm having. But more importantly, thank you for really providing a pathway for others to have great conversations and learn and constantly iterate and grow, so we can make healthcare a much more effective place for people to find that comfort and care.
Thank you, sir. It's truly an honor and privilege to have you. We learned quite a bit from you. You're not that far from me. One day we'll catch up for a cup of coffee.
I hope so. Yeah.
If you are around in Brooklyn. So, thank you so much for joining. Thank you, Susan.
Good night, everybody.
Good night, all of you.
Good night now. Bye-bye.
We are retelling their stories through our patented designs that can be worn on scrubs, t-shirts, printed on conference bags, and endless other promotional materials. Daily Wear for Medicine is the first ever of its kind to create curiosity in medicine through visual art. We at MedBricks are celebrating unsung heroes of the past who made enormous contributions to the field of medicine through our unique campaign called Daily Wear for Medicine. You can wear it, carry it, and give it